gone through McKinley.
Okay, let me.
Oh yeah,
go
jump in.
Go ahead. More.
Sure. What?
Okay.
Do it.
So here's McKinley. He's bimetal, but he's been seduced to the gold standard. He's against the war. He's been seduced to be behind that. He is for the protective tariff. They don't reduce the protective tariff until Roosevelt comes to office. But he is a heretic. He is a liberal. He is worthy of death. He does not wish to recognize the Pope's temporal power. Like I said, his favorite song on his deathbed was "Nearer, My God, to Thee." His wife loves him dearly. His wife is never the same after he dies. And I want to go through this tariff thing, if I may, in detail.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. Freemason William McKinley, 1843 to 1901, one of 8 presidents originating from Ohio. McKinley was the 7th of 9 children, was very poor, and like most youngsters of his day, was educated in a one-room schoolhouse until the age of 9. Reared on the Lord's AV 1611 English Reformation Bible, he was a most devoted Methodist whose mother had hoped he would become a minister. In 1852, he attended the Poland Academy, excelling in reading, debating, and public speaking. In 1861, he joined Lincoln's Federal Union Grand Army. He proved his bravery and leadership in battle, later becoming the idol of Ohio, quote-unquote. Leaving the Army with the rank of brevet major, he entered law school without the least suspicion that the Society of Jesus was in complete control of the Republican Party. The Sunday school head of Canton's First Methodist Church and president of the YMCA, McKinley began his public career in 1869 and was married 2 years later to Ida, the woman who adored him for 30 years. A low-level Freemason, our man of God was honest, moral, and upright, exhorting his martial nephew, James, who went into the Army, to, quote, keep your life and your speech both clean and be brave, unquote. Bringing the biblical maxims of honesty and patriotism into political office, McKinley was a marvelous promoter of domestic manufacturers and thus was a master of the high protective tariff, which, by the way, he wrote a book on it. As chairman of the Committee on Ways and Means, he was the impetus behind the passage of the high McKinley Tariff of 1890, so hated by the minions of the order, but loved by the people. Again, we're protecting domestic manufacturers, and there were no unions at this time. Striking back in 1894, the Sons of Loyola, via President Grover Cleveland, passed the Wilson-Gorman Tariff Act, lowering McKinley's tariff and beginning a personal income tax later declared unconstitutional by the Supreme Court in Pollock v. Farmers Loan and Trust Company. I give the site there. This setback would be remedied with the ratification of the 16th Amendment in 1913. Striking back and supported by McKinley, the flattering 1897 Dingley Act again raised the tariff to a new high, further outraging the order. The tariff would be lowered in 1909 via the Payne-Aldrich Tariff Act. Mm-hmm. So that's the Nelson Aldrich. He's the one in 1909, okay? Right. And again in 1913 via the Underwood Tariff Act without opposition from Presidents William Howard Taft, Skull and Bones, High-Level Mason, or Woodrow Wilson, the abject slaves of James Cardinal Gibbons. James Cardinal Gibbons is the powerhouse, the most powerful man in this country at this time, the Archbishop of Baltimore. Elected in 1897, President McKinley sought to avoid war with Spain, so the agents of Rome blew up U.S. battleship Maine in Cuba's Havana Harbor, igniting the Pope's Spanish-American War of 1898. The resultant treaty protected every piece of Roman Catholic Church property within the U.S. and its holdings, while setting the stage for the Black Pope's future World War II conquest of Japan through the evil acquisition of Hawaii, Guam, and the Philippines. We can't forget the acquisition of Hawaii.
But Eric, the thing is that they did, the United States through the Spanish-American War did, shall we say, acquire basically Catholic countries. So, right. So isn't there a problem or conflict there?
That's right, because again, the Jesuits are seeking to Catholicize our country.
So our acquisition of those lands do what for the United States?
Further the Catholic immigration from those countries into the U.S. to further Catholicize our electorate and thus the Congress.
Which we're seeing right now with the illegal immigration, which curiously, and I'm not saying, listen, let's face it, honestly, Brother Eric, the Mexicans, the Central Americans, the South Americans are coming here for a very good reason. They don't know
the Jesuits ruin their countries.
Yeah, they don't know they're being used. They want something better, and if you and I were in their shoes, we'd be up here too. They don't realize it, but the bottom line is it's a de-Anglicization and de-Protestantation and de-Americanization of the United States.
That's correct. That's what it's about. But in order for them to drive the Mexican people up here, they had to wreck their economies.
Right.
And so that's why they assassinated Benito Juarez.
Right.
That's why they national American corporate monopolies took over all their national resources. They've wrecked Mexico. They've wrecked Central America for that purpose, to destroy the historic white Anglo-Saxon Protestant peoples of North America.
And what we're seeing
this is a heretic nation that has to be destroyed pursuant to the Jesuit oath.
Right. I mean, you can't have a 700-pound gorilla trying to sustain itself against what would be a global order.
Right. Okay, so may I continue?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so here we go. World War II with the acquisition of Hawaii, Guam, and Philippines. McKinley purposed to break up the Pope's huge Masonic Rockefeller and Morgan trusts, seriously threatening the cartel capitalist powers of the empire. That was a major thing that created all these enemies for him. He also favored bimetallism, but was intimidated by foreign powers into banning the silver, signing the Gold Standard Act of 1900. Re-elected in 1901 with New York's Masonic Theodore Roosevelt as his vice presidential running mate, the order called upon its evil international anarchist terrorist network to extirpate, quote, this heretic from the face of the whole earth. That's what they did. Okay, so now that they shot McKinley, he's not mortally wounded. He's shot once, it's not hurting him, and the other is in the left part of the lower chest, 4 inches below the nipple, 1.5 inches away from the solar plexus, okay? So he's hurting there, but he's not mortally wounded.
Okay.
So what happens is he is moved to the head of the Pan American Exposition there in Buffalo. Buffalo is a haven for the Jesuits. Canisius College, the Jesuits Canisius College is in Buffalo. And it's out of that college that they orchestrate the assassination of McKinley, because all these Jesuit universities are nothing more than military fortresses functioning under the guise of places of higher education. So this Czolgosz knows every move of McKinley. He knows where he is. He knows that whenever he's speaking. And how does he know this? Because McKinley's Secretary of Interior is a coadjutor keeping the Jesuits informed as to where he will be so that Czolgosz can be informed as to where he will be. Czolgosz then shoots him in the Temple of Music at the exhibition. Oh, and that must have been music to the Jesuits' ears. Okay. And then he's taken away. By the way, a black waiter who had just shaken the hands of McKinley jumped on this assassin, was pounding him into the ground, praise the Lord, and McKinley says to his agents, be easy on him, boys.
Oh, boy.
And so Czolgosz is arrested, he's booked, and who is blamed for Czolgosz's inspiration to shoot McKinley? Emma Goldman.
Oh.
Emma Goldman.
Comrade Goldman.
This noted Jewish anarchist. And Czolgosz, meanwhile, had been attending anarchist meetings in Jesuits Cleveland, Ohio. But he then says, I was inspired by Emma Goldman. And Emma Goldman never heard of him, didn't know who he was. She said, I can't help that some nut heard me speak. So what they did was they blamed Emma Goldman for this. Later, she goes to prison for 2 years, and I believe in 1919, J. Edgar Hoover deports her back to Russia, along with 200 others, supposed anarchists. So they blame Emma Goldman, blame the Jew for a Jesuit assassination. And they will do the same thing with the Rosenbergs, and they will do the same thing with the Jews, either with Greenspan or Silverstein or the World Trade Center. You watch. So that was the history of Czolgosz. When Czolgosz, they question him. I have this whole trial where the judge is questioning him, finds out that he was Roman Catholic. Czolgosz says, I was educated in the common school. He says, were you ever educated in parochial schools? He says, yes. He says, I presume Catholic schools? He says, yes. Czolgosz was educated in Catholic schools. He was a Roman Catholic. And he wanted to see a Roman Catholic priest before he was executed. When they electrocuted him, They evaluated his body. He said, "I done my duty. I done my duty in killing McKinley." They examined his body. He said McKinley was the enemy of the working man. Czolgosz was not a working man. He was not a laborer. He was a drifter.
Mm-hmm.
He was a coadjutor waiting for an order. And what they did was, after they electrocuted him, they did this long, extensive autopsy, measured his skull, measured his muscles, measured all this. He was a young man. He was only in his 20s. They threw his body in a grave near the prison, put quicklime and acid all over his body, ate it to nothing, buried it so there's no evidence at all of anything they can retrieve about Leon Czolgosz. So that was the assassination of McKinley. Now, who benefits? Why Roosevelt benefits. Who was he? He, like Grover Cleveland, he had been the governor of New York, Grover